We've talked about Wi-Fi and how we can protect Wi-Fi in earlier sections on networking. We're going to briefly and very quickly go over each of these topics just as a quick refresher and so you can get these for the Tech Plus exam. Essentially, wireless network security refers to the various methods that are used to protect our Wi-Fi networks. We can understand and properly configure network settings to make the most out of our wireless network security and to make sure that hackers and potential threats don't get into our network. Wireless network security settings and best practices that we're going to be covering: WPA, WPA2, WPA3. Remember, WPA3 and WPA2 are the most common and newest ones. WPA, not really that secure. Router, we're going to be talking about router admin interface basics, how to change default credentials or why you should change default credentials, disabling WPS, guest networks, encrypted versus unencrypted networks, security awareness. Again, we've already covered these topics. I'm just going to briefly go through these as a refresher, just because this does have to do with security. So WPA, WPA2, and WPA3. WPA2 is older. WPA3 is newer. When you can, use WPA3. It's the stronger modern encryption out of all of them. WPA is much, much older. We don't even really talk about WPA anymore, but WPA2, it is an older standard and it is vulnerable to online attacks, but it's not necessarily as bad as WPA. But if you can, just use WPA3. Most routers, most networking devices support WPA3. That's really all you need to know. WPA3, most up to date. WPA2, kind of outdated. WPA, super outdated. And again, WPA stands for Wi-Fi Protected Access. All these do, WPA, WPA2, WPA3, they encrypt data and they control access to Wi-Fi. Router admin interface basics. So the router admin interface is a web-based control panel that we get to from our computer where we can control router security, network access, and device settings. We can get in to change Wi-Fi settings, help secure the network, enable firewalls and encryption and things like that. For example, we might have a brand of router that tells us to go out to 192.168.1.1 in a browser. And then in that browser, we can actually manage the router and start to add some of the custom security settings, like changing the Wi-Fi name, changing the default password, and enabling WPA2 or 3. Changing default credentials. Nowadays, is this necessary? I don't know if this is as necessary as it used to be, mainly because from what I've seen, the routers that have passwords on them by default are pretty strong already. Now, yeah, should you change the default credential? Yeah. If you're taking a certification, a security certification, or if you're doing this in an office setting, of course, change the default password. But if you're at home and you don't have any neighbors nearby, like if you live out in the country and you have no one nearby you, you don't really need to change it, but you can get into the best practice of changing it. Just from what I've seen from the newest routers and the most up-to-date ones, usually they have really strong default passwords set. Now, I get the argument. Hackers might be able to figure out how they're creating these passwords, and there might be passwords being used similarly among multiple routers. Okay, I get that. But to me, this isn't a huge deal. Just understand, if you get a question on the Tech Plus exam about changing default credentials, you should change the default credentials for any router that you have. Router security settings, here the SSID or the name of the Wi-Fi is there. Security, they're using the most up-to-date WPA3, and they're disabling WPS, which does have certain types of security concerns. They also have a guest network on as well. And let's talk about WPS. So Wi-Fi Protected Setup, or WPS, is a feature that allows devices to connect to a Wi-Fi network quickly using the press of a button or pin instead of a password. WPS can present some security risks as there are known vulnerabilities. So WPS does have vulnerabilities that hackers, that people on the street can take advantage of. Just overall, if you want to make the most out of your security, disable WPS. While it is a convenient feature, you don't need it. You can just type in the Wi-Fi password. So here, following that, we have guest networks. This is just a separate Wi-Fi network created for visitors, more common in corporate environments for like when auditors come in or third parties or consultants or contractors. Usually we don't give them access to the main network. We just give them access to the guest network. Again, many times IT staff will give access to the guest network to any of these people. This just helps to reduce the risk of anyone coming on the network and accidentally bringing something or intentionally bringing something that's negative, like a virus, to the network. Encrypted and unencrypted networks, and we don't really need to cover this. Encrypted networks are networks that don't have WPA, WPA2, or WPA3 enabled. There's no reason why they shouldn't have it enabled. It's essentially public Wi-Fi without a password. Encrypted networks, they use some sort of encryption, WPA, WPA2, ideally WPA3. That's really all you need to know. Unencrypted networks, they're unsecure. They send data through plain text, easy for attackers to hack, and they don't use passwords on their Wi-Fi. Encrypted, data scrambled, encrypted, protected, high security, hard for attackers to get into, secure Wi-Fi, HTTPS, VPNs. Security awareness is the practice of educating, training, and consistently ensuring that employees are able to detect and respond to common security risks. So, for example, you might give your employees annually or quarterly security training, and then you might also run what's known as security simulations or phishing simulations, where employees might get, say, fake phishing emails from an internal source that is trying to see if they'll open the email and they'll download something or click a link. So that's really the most common way organizations do security awareness. We could go through this whole thing, but keep in mind, many organizations employ tools like KnowBe4, what I just talked about with the whole security training and simulated phishing attacks through email, in order to train, quiz, and present real-time phishing simulations and attacks as tests. Again, this is unique because they actually send out real emails that look like emails, but they're just phishing simulations, just to test and see, okay, someone's going to click on it. And then if someone clicks on it, a message pops up in the email and it says, you've been phished or whatever. And then they have to complete more remedial training. It's just a massive, they're genius product to them because it's so simple and it's a multi-billion-dollar company, but it's kind of silly. Anyway, that's that for security awareness. And let's conclude everything that we learned about in this video. So we covered the main settings and best practices used to secure wireless networks and protect user data. Topics we covered: WPA, WPA2, WPA3. Remember, use WPA3 when possible. We talked about the router admin interface. Once a router is up and you have the IP address for that router, then you can connect to that router and then access the router admin interface. In terms of changing default credentials, just change the default SSID or the display name for the Wi-Fi and the default password. Disabling WPS, just disable it. It's not that useful. Guest networks can be used to isolate visitors from accessing the main network. Encrypted versus unencrypted networks, pretty simple. It's just either the network has encryption like WPA, WPA2, WPA3 with password, or it's unencrypted and it has no password and no encryption. Security awareness is just educating employees, having them recognize risks and practice safe behavior when browsing, when doing email, things like that. And that is it for this section as far as all of our topics. In the next video, we're going to be going over this section's recap. We're going to be covering some exam tips, and we're going to be giving you your final exam questions for this section.